Hello, welcome to the first tutorial on the material database for Structures Office. We chose SQLite as our relational database management system. It's heavily used in browsers and mobile applications, and it's a public domain application that's available from SQLite.org, and we'll do that download later in a second tutorial. It's file-based. So when you install Structures Office, all the setup it's all done. It's not like SQL Server where you've got to set up a database, and that usually requires a system administrator to get that done right. It's a very simple setup. And it's important to know that the security is strictly based on file access. There's no granularity of once a user has been granted access to that file, they can edit all tables. It's not like SQL Server. You can say that certain users can see certain tables. So the first step, and we'll see in a minute, is to create the database that you want to store your materials in, and it's a file that can be created anywhere that you have permission to create a file. It doesn't matter. It's the user's responsibility to manage that file, that is, manage the access to that file for specific users and perform backups. And it's very important to know that it's the sole authority for material specification. So if you define say an I-beam, and you associate a material with that I-beam, and you later change that material definition, the next time you open that I-beam document, it will be using the new material, that changed material. So the answers you got before may not match when you've modified the material definition. And there's an option in there that if you ever want to prevent people from editing a material, once you've started using it, you can lock it. And Structures Office won't allow you to make any changes. So that's it. Let's move on to the application. So here we are in Structures Office, and note that we're at version 1.1, which is where the material database was added. And as I mentioned in the introduction, there's a new tab here called Materials and Loads. And in here, over here on the left, you'll see two options. One is to create a new database, and the other is to connect to an existing database. And let's assume that you've never used the material database before, so we're going to create a new one. And I'll put it underneath my user account. It tells me you've already got one. Well, that's fine. I'm just going to delete the file. They are just files. And try it again. Okay, this time it tells me it was successful and created a new file called structuresoffice.sqldb. And once you have a database associated with your objects, your documents, then these two panels activate. And let's look at the material. This is the metal materials database. You see it created a aluminum by default. And we have functions to add a new material, edit an existing material, delete a material, unselect, which is just if you selected an object it will unselect it, and view, which will view it without editing. So let's say I want to just view that. Okay, so there's 4 fields at the top, which are strings, which give the description. The key identifier is the name, and that's got to be unique because that's the key into the table. So every material that you define has got to have a unique name. Every metal has to have a unique name. There's the family. There's a specification for that, 2024 aluminum, and the unified naming system for metals. And you'll see that there's a switch here for isotropic, and there's units, and there's a conversion calculator for moving between. Well, let's just show you here. If you'd set this comes with Windows, and I set the view to unit conversion. I would set the unit to pressure, and let's say I wanted to do, I knew things in kilopascals, and I want to see what that is in PSI. So that's just a way of, if you know a value in one unit system, convert to the other. So here's the Young's modulus. There's a value for tension and compression. There's the shear modulus, Poisson's ratio, density, your yield allowables, and that's for longitudinal traverse. If you're dealing with a sheet and your material has a grain direction, there's with the grain is longitudinal, across the grain is transverse. And similarly for ultimate allowables. But you don't need to add all those. You don't need to enter all of this, and I'll show you that in a minute. And let's just create a material now. You see the red values are the ones that you must enter. And I enter a unique name I give it a Young's modulus of Poisson's ratio. It computes my shear modulus based on the E and Poisson's ratio. And let's set a color. Let's set it to a greenish color. And so now we have two metals in the database. We can close this. Okay, now that we've got a material defined, let's apply it to an object. I'll create a shape here, a disk, add it, and go to the materials. Okay, so now I go to apply the material. I'll say apply to all. Pick the metal 1 and pick apply. And to see, if I ever want to see the names, I can just toggle on the show materials. Okay, now let's add another material. We'll call it metal 2. And let's pick a color for that. So a reddish color. And now let's close out of that, and let's say set the materials for all. We'll set it to material 2, and we'll apply it. You see the colors now that reddish color. And now let's say that I want to lock that. I don't want anybody modifying it. I would click edit. It will say, it tell you that the database is the sole authority and that editing a material will affect all objects using that material in all documents. Are you sure you want to continue? I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to just go down here and click lock the material. Now when I click on that material, it won't allow me to edit it. Just view it. Unselect, by the way, just means unselect what you just picked. Up here in the aluminum, we defined these 4 fields for description, and there's a filtering set of inputs up here. Say I want to filter on the spec on QQ. So I'm looking for the specification with QQ in the string. any number of characters preceding that, and the percent signs are wildcards. So if I apply it, it will show me only those materials which match this filter. In case you forgot, that's the QQ there. So I think that's pretty much it. And when you want to use that same database, and you can have as many databases as you want, but keeping track of them, as I said, that's your responsibility. You can just connect to an existing and pick any file that is a Structures Office SQL database, and you're ready to go. If you ever want to see what you're attached to, at any time you click Show Path, and it'll show you which database you're using. So that's it. And in the second tutorial, we'll go into more detail of how to find a large number of materials at once. Thanks for listening.